is the biggest bag I have ever made on my domestic sewing machine. I know a lot of us get a little intimidated on big patterns, especially when sewing on a domestic machine, like if our machine can handle it and things like that, if we can pull off all the proper techniques. But I want to show you in this video everything I did to sew up the Transponster Tote by Sincerely Gem Patterns. The Transponster Tote comes in 4 sizes and this is the large. All of my fabrics are from Sew Girly Fun, and I'm going to have a link for both the pattern and the fabrics in my description. When sewing on a domestic, there's certain things we have to keep in mind, especially when we have curves like this on the side. So I'm going to show you exactly what I do and how I go about getting that perfect curve so I can have this gorgeous bag. Before we get started in the video, I just want to show you how big it really is on the inside. So let me open it up. And you can see that is huge. But now let's go ahead and learn everything we need to do to sew up this huge of a bag on a domestic machine. We actually don't need a lot of pieces to sew up this tote. It's just that the pieces we have are really big. So let's go ahead and go through all the pieces. And while I'm doing that, I'm also going to kind of walk you through how I went ahead and prepped everything while I was cutting it. When I prep things as I'm cutting, that makes it easier for me to go ahead and get things sewn up quicker. So the first thing we'll talk about is our zipper panels. We're going to have 4 of these panels. I'm going to have 2 exterior and 2 lining. Here's one of the exterior pieces. I know you're not going to be able to see everything on camera due to the size, so I apologize. Here's one of the lining pieces. These are all canvas, so what I did was I didn't do anything on the lining pieces, but for the exterior pieces I did put a piece of medium weight interfacing. I also drew a line according to what the pattern says and folded down this raw edge on each one of these on both sides. So that's how I prep these pieces. They're actually ready to be sewn with my zipper at this point. The next thing we'll talk about is we'll go ahead and talk about that exterior zipper. That is your longer zipper. I went ahead and cut it to the length specified in the pattern. I went ahead and folded the closed end of the zipper 90 degrees. I have not sewn this yet. I just clipped it closed. I'm going to sew down each of these whenever we get to the machine. I also went ahead and cut a piece of vinyl and just folded a zipper tab. Then I will just top stitch across the end of this. Make sure you have your zipper pull on your exterior zipper. This zipper pull is from Sew Girly Fun. I have my interior zipper with my zipper pull on. So this will be the webbing that I'm going to use for my handles. I won't have enough of it for my crossbody straps, so I'll just use a simple black or just a plain color for the crossbody strap. But these are the handles. Then for our actual pieces, let's talk about them. I'm going to have 2 interior side panels. Your side panels and your main panels are going to be different sizes for your lining and for your exterior. So don't just try to stack them all together and cut them. You'd be wrong. So what I did with this is another canvas print. I went ahead and added a layer of Decaville light on the back of this. I did keep that Decaville light completely out of the seam allowance. I'm sewing on a domestic machine. And there's a difference between, oh, can my machine handle sewing through Decaville light compared to, is it an enjoyable experience and are you able to get just the perfect curves you want? So because of those things, everything's going to be staying out of the seam allowance as far as interfacing for me on this pattern. You have a pattern piece for your lining side panel and a pattern piece for your exterior side panel that has darts on them. You cut the darts out of the paper pattern piece, but then you just trace it onto the back. So this is what it'll look like. When you trace that on the back, all you do is you go ahead and match up those 2 lines and it'll end in that point right there. Whenever I take this over the machine, I'll go ahead and start stitching down here, back stitch, go all the way here, back stitch. You can trim down these after you do that, due to about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do that on both the interior and exterior side panels. So I already have all of those clipped. That's the 2 side pieces. Let's talk about the exterior pieces. I could have went heavier on the interfacing for my exterior pieces. This is a cotton canvas. It is a heavy, good quality cotton canvas, but I still could have put a layer of a medium weight, like a SF101 equivalent on the back of this. I didn't. It's going to be okay. Mine just won't be as firm as some other ones. I did go ahead and use webbing for my D-ring connectors. The pattern tells you how long to cut this. I just added a 1-inch D-ring. I folded it in half and placed it exactly in the center of this exterior side panel. I went ahead and clipped my darts the same way with the lining. Same thing for my other exterior piece. The only other thing I did was the pattern tells you to add a layer of Decaville Heavy. They tell you how far down to place this piece, and you center. Pretty simple there, but that gives a little bit more support. We have 2 bottom pieces. For my exterior, I'm going to use a piece of vinyl. I'm going to actually have this one interface with Decaville Heavy. It's going to provide a little more firm support. You can see it's definitely kept out of the seam allowance on all sides. For the interior bottom panel, what I'll do is I'll have this interface with a piece of Decaville Light, kept out of the seam allowances. So you can tell that bottom piece has the most amount of structure to it. Then we have our main panel pieces. For my front, I have my front main exterior panel. For my slip pocket, I'm using a panel. This is from So Girly Fun. This is going to be my exterior. This is going to be my interior. That's the lining. After I cut these 2 pieces, you can interface them with the SF101, then immediately put them wrong sides together. In the pattern, they tell you can use a piece of vinyl for the trim. I did not want to do that. I kind of wanted everything to blend in a little bit better. I just used an extra piece from this panel that I'd cut off and folded it to make a piece of double fold tape and clip that on the top. Since I already had that clipped on, I have everything wrong sides together. All I have to do is just go completely around this, and that will get the slip pocket made. Once I get my slip pocket made, all I have to do then is match up the centers on my exterior panel, lay it right on there, and then I just sew down the 2 long sides and across the bottom, basting that in place. For my exterior piece, this again is that canvas. I have the layer of Decaville Heavy here. Like I said, I should have put on some SF101, so I think it will be okay. That is the exterior main. You'll have 2 of these. Then we have our lining pieces. Like I had mentioned, the lining pieces are a different size. Keep note of that. Don't think they're the same. This is one lining piece. It's a canvas as well. I have it interfaced with a Decaville Light on the back, and it is kept out of the seam allowance. I'm sorry, I know you can't see all these pieces where they're so big, so I hope that's not bothering you too much. For my other lining piece, I went ahead and attached one, just by clipping, one of my zipper pocket pieces. This is how we are going to birth the bag, so you don't want to leave this pocket out. I cut out the 2 pocket pieces. We have 2 of those. I placed it right sides together with the lining. You go down about 1 inch from the top, center this piece, draw your box on, and you're just going to sew that directly on that line, and then we'll cut that open to make our zipper pocket. You could put a zipper overlay on here. I'm not going to do that. I'm just keeping everything kind of simple. So to get started sewing, what I'll do is I'll sew on this box first. I'll sew my pocket. I'm going to pull out those side panel pieces. So each one of my side panels, I'm also going to, based on the D-rings here at the top of my exterior panels. And the last thing I'll do in this is all the first time I'm sitting down sewing, is I'll also go ahead and prep this zipper and have that prepped. So doing all these steps right at once gets you started really quickly, and so you make progress really fast with this pattern, and it helps you just to get a really good start, so you're motivated to finish the back quickly. I sewed and trimmed the darts on all 4 of these side panel pieces, the interior and the exterior. I sewed my zipper ends down and sewed the tab on. I basted the D-ring on the top of the exterior pieces for the side panels. Top stitched the trim on the slip pocket and then basted around the sides. And then I sewed directly on the zipper box that I drew using the pattern measurements onto the lining piece. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a line right down the middle of this box that I drew. Here at the end, I will cut diagonally into the corners to make that traditional zipper box that we do all the time. I'll push my lining through, take it over to the ironing board, and make a clean opening on this piece. My side panel pieces, I will not need these for the next few steps I'm doing, so I'm going to set these aside. For this slip pocket I made, I'm going to pull out one of my exterior main pieces. I'm going to make a mark on the center of the bottom of the slip pocket, center on the bottom of this exterior main. I'm going to match those up. And then what I'll do for this is I'm just going to stitch down these long sides across the bottom to secure that in place. So now I'm going to also start working on this zipper panel. This is going to be a recessed zipper, and so we will be creating it just like you would any other recessed zipper. I do not have these glued down or taped down so you can see mine popping up, but it won't be a problem. It'll be okay. But the way you'll do this is let's pull out one exterior and one lining. We're going to make a traditional zipper sandwich. Make sure you have your pull on. Take your lining piece and you're going to have your zipper right sides up. We want this point, this 90-degree end, to be right where the fold is. So just kind of have those lined up there. I'm going to put a clip or 2 in place. Let me trim off that edge so it's a little bit easier for me. So zipper right side up, lining panel right side up. You can baste this in place if you want to, or you can just do a traditional zipper sandwich and put them together. So this is how it'll look. You're going to, if you baste it, you'll just baste all the way down. If you feel comfortable doing the zipper sandwich, go ahead and match up these folded edges. Let's put a clip right there just to kind of make sure it doesn't slip. And then you'll go ahead and clip the exterior. The exterior will be right sides together with both the zipper tape and your lining piece. Once you have that clipped in place, you're going to sew through all 3 layers, the lining, exterior, and the zipper tape, from one end to the other using the seam allowance given the pattern. After we sew this with the seam allowance given the pattern, I'm going to go ahead and flip this wrong sides together. And then what I'll do is I'll top stitch that folded edge right against the zipper teeth, but on the panels, not on your zipper tape. And then I'll baste around all 4 sides. I will go ahead and repeat that and do it for both of these so my zipper panel's complete, and I'll baste on my pocket. So I went ahead and cut down the middle of that lining, opened it up, and pushed the zipper pocket through, and then I have it going the right way on the back. I'm going to grab out that zipper for my interior, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my zipper pull is closing to the left. I'm going to slide this back behind here. You can use double-sided tape if you want, pins, clips, whatever, but I'm just going to keep it like this, and then what I'll do is I'll keep my zipper teeth centered in the middle, and I'll sew all around the perimeter of this box, making sure that my zipper pull is inside. Don't make like mine is, but just don't close up the box if your zipper pull's not in there. Go around the perimeter, and that will have that next step completed for our lining piece. I have my gusset completely done. It is gorgeous. I love it. So what I'm going to do now with this gusset piece, so I'm going to pull out a lining piece. Make sure yours is orientated the right way. What you're going to do is you're going to place your zipper panel right sides up and match those two raw edges. You're going to center that in place on this lining panel, and then you're just going to base that down. So I'm going to do that step also while I'm sewing. And if this is hard for you to do all these steps and have all these different pieces going on at the same time, you don't have to do it. You can do it another way. I kind of gotten used to having all these different components, sewing them all at once, doing it this way, but definitely you can follow the pattern and do one piece at a time and see it through and then go on if that's easier for you. I have this slip pocket basted in place. The next thing I'll do with it is I'm going to pull out those webbing handles. These are the handles. This is not the crossbody. The pattern tells us where we're going to put this on, but basically I'm going to be covering up these raw edges. I'm using this webbing to cover them up. So I'm going to clip one flush with the bottom, and I'm just going to, like, you can use the pattern measurements for sure. I'm just going to center mine over that slip pocket there, so the raw edge of the slip pocket, have it centered. I'm going to put a clip right there. I'm going to take it around to make sure I don't get it twisted. That's something you definitely don't want to do. You could use double-sided tape or pins here. You couldn't really use clips so much all throughout it, but you can use clips here at the bottom. And then also what you can do, put a clip here at the top as well. Again, make sure that it is not twisted. Mine is not. I'm good. At this point, I will start sewing at the, let me scoot this over so maybe you can see a little bit better. I'll start sewing at the bottom. I'll go all the way up. I'm going to go a little bit past that slip pocket, go over, then come back down. You can put rivets in there, whatever you wanted for decoration. I'll do that again on this side. What I'll do after that is I will go ahead and grab my other exterior piece. I'm going to make sure I put them exactly in the same place. So I'll even put my exterior bottom down here and make sure they match up. I'll sew the other handle onto my exterior just like this one. So I'm going to go ahead and sew all these things all at once. With the zipper installed on the lining panel, I'm going to flip it over and attach this other lining zipper pocket piece. I will place them right sides together and just put a few clips around here to kind of keep everything organized so it's not shifting. I'm going to sew around the two long sides and the top. I'm going to leave my bottom completely open. We will be birthing through that opening there. So I'm going to sew up, over, down, make sure to back stitch on those pieces. So that will be the next step. I have the webbing handles attached to both of my exterior pieces. So my exterior is ready for the bottom. I'll take that bottom exterior piece. I'm just going to add a few clips here on the sides to hold it in place. This seam allowance, at this point, this is the first time we're really using that full seam allowance. The other steps have been just kind of more based on what we were doing at the time. So we will be sewing with the full seam allowance. It is a large seam allowance. Make sure you get that attached. For the lining, I can only attach one side to the bottom right now because I'm still working on the other one. So for the lining, I'll do the same thing. Clip it in place, sew it with the full seam allowance in the pattern. Whenever you sew this exterior with that base, make sure that you, after you have it sewn together, that you're going to top stitch on the bottom on this base piece. You'll feel it. It'll feel odd if you try to push that seam allowance up because this webbing is so thick in the back. It's going to want to go down, and you need to let it go down so there's not this big hump of bulk here where your webbing is. So seam allowance goes down and you're top stitching on your base. So this bag is so big, it's almost impossible to show you everything on camera. But I did finish the lining. I have that bottom panel attached. I have the exterior bottom panel attached. For the exterior, the next step is the side panels. So I'm going to show you that. And then for the lining, the next step is adding the zipper panel onto the other side. For the side panel, pull out your exterior piece. Mark the center on the bottom, mark the center on this bottom gusset piece, this bottom base piece. First thing you do is you match up those two center marks. My vinyl's a little slick, so I'm going to make sure I clip this really well, or it's just going to slide all over the place. After you get those two center marks clipped, then what you're going to do is clip the top marks. So we're just going to clip these two top edges together. After we have the top edges and the center mark, then we just kind of ease everything around. I always do the straight sides first, and then the curve I will save for last. Okay, got that side clip there. I'm going to do the other side, and then we will sew this around with the full seam allowance given the pattern. I will do one of these on camera so you can see how I sew it up, but I won't do the other ones on camera just to save you the time so you're not watching all of it. But if you did like me and you kept all of the interfacing out of your seam allowance, you're not going to have any trouble sewing this curve around with that seam allowance. It's going to be very easy. The thing we always want to do is when we're sewing a curve, we're only sewing through a straight line. We straighten it out right where the needle's going to hit it, so it's a flat seam we're going across, and then that curve kind of takes care of itself. You'll get to see that when I'm sewing it. I'll slow that part down so you can see it, but that's the only trick to the curve. Push it in so those edges are flush and together, and this is what it looks like. I know you can't see it very well, but that's how it looks. So I'm going to sew this, and then off camera I will sew all the other curves inside, so when I come back I'll have the exterior and the linings curves sewed together. But before I do that, this gusset, we've already attached it to the one side here. I'm going to do that exact same thing. It's actually easier to do it this way because when you pull it up, you just got to make sure that these edges are aligned too. Make your center marks, but everything should line up perfectly. And it's going to be lining right side up, zipper panel right sides up. When I do a recessed zipper, lots of times mine gets a little uneven. So the key is to check these edges. See how they're flush? These edges are flush. So I've got everything even and organized. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to base this in place and sew that curve around, and then we'll be ready for the next steps and almost done. So the bag is heavy. I'm going to kind of smush everything up here so that way it's not pulling things down. I am going to start with the seam allowance, give them a pattern, making sure I'm back stitching really well at the top. This first straight part's not a problem. Just make sure you keep everything nice and even. Now as we're getting to this curve, what I'm doing is I'm just flattening it out to make sure that I have it straight this way. I'll keep doing that and going little stitches at a time and adjusting to make sure that I keep the seam allowance properly and I keep everything pushed together. At this point, I have my exterior and my lining complete. I'm going to take my lining and have it right sides out. So I'm going to turn it right sides out. My exterior is going to be wrong sides out. I'm going to put the lining inside the exterior. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start matching up the corners. So I'll start with these 4 corners and clip there, and it's kind of, you're going to have to smush everything around. But I'm going to match up the corners first, and then I will clip the rest of the way around. I'm going to sew it with the seam allowance, giving a pattern all the way around the top. After I do that, I will berth the bag through the opening in the zipper pocket in the lining. Push your handle down in there. You don't want to get that caught into your lining. Make sure your D-ring connector is facing down so that you don't hit it with your needle. I'm pushing the zipper down in there as well. I'm not sewing. I want to make sure I don't catch it in the seam allowance when I'm sewing also. So it's a little bit of a push of everything, so make sure all hardware is out of the way before you start sewing. So you are going to attach the raw edge of the lining to the raw edge of the exterior. Your zipper gusset is down in there. We would not, of course, want to sew it like this because then we would lose our zipper teeth. So make sure that zipper gusset is folded down. Your strap is folded down. The end of the zipper is down in there too, and just keep clipping around. If you sewed with the proper seam allowance, everything should match up nicely. If you have any trouble with this top edge, you can maybe check the seam allowance if you can't just kind of adjust it. Okay, so I know you can't see this perfectly, but here's what I got. I'm looking at the wrong side of the interior. I'm looking at the wrong side of the exterior. Both of these are right sides together. Everything is pushed down. The hardware's pushed down. The zipper panels, the zipper tape, everything's in there. I'm going to sew all the way around this bag. You're just going to sew in a complete loop using that seam allowance given in the pattern, and then we will berth it through the opening in the lining. Where this is a big bag, you're going to have to kind of flop it over on itself when you're sewing the side. That's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. Just maneuver it the way you need to get it in there. I have it turned right side out. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous, and it's huge. This is huge, but I'm okay with the structure. The structure's good. We still got to do a couple more things, and I think it's going to be perfect. I am thoroughly okay with that. A little bit of slouch. Probably if I did it over, I would add the SF101, but I definitely didn't mess it up. Anyway, let's keep going. So you can see right here is my exterior. We're pushing, the pattern tells us how much to push it down, but that Decaville heavy really is going to be right here in your seam. So that's kind of a good kind of indicator as to where you're going to push it down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and clip all the way around, making sure everything is even. Okay, so now we got to do some top stitching. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. What I did was I went ahead and turned my bag inside out because I did not want to top stitch from the lining side. I wanted to top stitch on my exterior because that's what matters to me the most. A couple of things you got to do is you got to make sure that that seam allowance is going down. If your zipper panel is not flipping up on its own, then you need to go and flip it so that you can feel that seam allowance going down. So just make for sure you have it going the right way. It pretty much falls everywhere except around the zipper panel. So if your zipper panel is pointing down naturally, It should want to go up. We're going to push it down while we stitch around, but we need to make sure that seam allowance stays where where we need it to be. Two things we got to do is we're going to top stitch that typical 1/8 of an inch away all around the perimeter. But then we're also going to top stitch that seam down. Now the pattern tells you exactly how much that is, but you're going to do 2 rows of top stitching, one the traditional one and then one to catch that seam and keep it down. I'm going to do this all from the exterior because I just think it'll look better. So while I'm going to have that seam allowance going down and that zipper pound wants to go up, I'm going to flip it out of the way. I'll make sure that seam allowance stays down while I'm doing that, so that way I don't get it caught while I'm doing my top stitching. I'm going to go ahead and do that easy top stitching first and get that one out of the way, and then hopefully the other row will be just as easy when I do that. So, long process of top stitching around this bag a couple of times, but we're almost done. Okay, I did that top row of top stitching. That's the easier one in my opinion. Now this second row, what you're wanting to do is you're going to, I'm still going to be top stitching on my exterior, but it's going to be about 1.25 inches, 1.1 inches down from that edge of stitching you just did. You're going to catch that seam, and it's going to be just really, your straps are going to be going down. You're not sewing over your straps. Your zipper gusset will be up. Your connectors will be up, so you will go across them. You're actually going to be stitching that, securing that excess webbing down. So it's a little tricky for me to get the proper seam allowance on this. I have a lot of anxiety when doing this part. You could draw it on, because like when my panel's up, I can't see my marks here on my machine. So it makes me a little anxious. I go slow, but definitely feel free to draw on the seam allowances. But we're going to do this same loop all the way around using that new top stitching measurement. I got the top stitching done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this bag right sides out. We're going to finish on the exterior by working with the sides. Now a lot of people had trouble with this step, I think, but I think it's because they just used too thick of materials. So when I made my first one, this is the kind of materials and interfacing I used, so I had no trouble. But I think if you use like super stiff stuff and you're working on domestic, it could be tricky. I can see that. So I need to trim up my threads there. My top stitching went okay. I had one spot where I felt like it was a little off, but not too bad. So what you do now is you go in from that interior, and what you're going to do is you're going to kind of push these together and clip them. So when we clip, you can see I have my interior pushed in, and I'm going to be sewing on the exterior side. And these are just going to kind of connect these, give the bag a little more shape, little more support, stability, and just make sure that that lining is not like super baggy. So for me, it's so thin here, I'm not going to have any trouble. But if you were using like maybe a vinyl and a waterproof canvas, it may be a little tricky for you. So just keep that in mind. And it's not like, oh, my machine couldn't handle the heavy layers. It's just, is it as fun of a sew? Is it as enjoyable if you have to fight the machine the whole time or hand crank? And for me, I just choose to have a more enjoyable sew by having the thinner layers. So I'm constantly putting my hand in there, making sure that lining is pushed completely in that fold. I don't want to miss any of it. Down here at that bottom, that's where I'm going to have a little bit of bulk. That's going to be the bulkiest part for me because I do have a little bit of vinyl in my first one. I did not use any vinyl there, but it's still, you can see it's still not that bad. I'll just have to go slow to make sure I don't have any problems with my top stitching. Okay, so I have that all clipped. Let's look at it from the exterior side. Look, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Sorry. I'm going to do that same clipping on this side, and then we're going to sew both of the sides. I'm also going to take out this exterior pocket that I had left open. I'm going to go ahead and push this in so I can close this up. I'm going to do all of this sewing all at once so I can hurry and finish this bag. I'm actually supposed to be going to teach a class in person in just about an hour, so I got to hurry and finish so I can go and teach a class. Okay, so we will sew across the opening of this, back stitching on both sides just to close everything up. I'm going to go off camera and clip this other side, and then I'll come back so we can sew it all up. I know you can't see all of this on camera. I'll try to when I get everything finished, kind of zoom out so you can see everything. But look, the structure's great on it, even though I didn't add a lot. And because I didn't add a lot, it's going to make this final sew so much easier. So consider not adding too much interfacing on this bag. Now, I could have added a layer of SF101 and been fine, but I am so content with it. Everything's looking wonderful. I'm going to sew around the corners. Now, only problems I'm going to have is right here at the seams where we have the vinyl. With that seam there at the bottom, you're going to have a couple layers, like, you know, of vinyl and material to go through. So it's a little bulky. You may see me hand crank, or you just might see me go slow. No matter, it's going to be okay. Don't forget that you're going to see your bobbin and your thread on both sides here at the exterior. I'm going to sew it this way because I feel like it will be easier for me to go up and around here. I'll rotate the bag when I come to this part. I know it's a little risky this step, but really just go slow. Watch your seam allowance. Don't watch your needle. Watch the seam allowance here, and you should be fine with everything. But let's take it slow. Okay guys, I finished my tote. Everything looks amazing. I could not be more pleased with it. If I did it again, I probably would add the extra SF101, even though this is a canvas and high quality, just to kind of help it a little bit. But other than that, it's perfect. Look at the size of this. Oh my gosh, it is so good. Inside, that's huge, a huge opening. Wow. Oh, I didn't put my lining in there. Hold on. Look at that. I love it. So I love. I'll definitely be making more of these. I think they're great travel bags. And even though this is a tote, it's like such an amazing looking tote. It's not at all like, I don't know, plain or boring. It is so gorgeous. Thank you to Sincerely Jen for writing an amazing pattern and for letting me do a tutorial on it. Thank you to Susie from So Girly Fun for letting me be part of her team and having these gorgeous prints. If you don't know, Susie draws all her own designs herself. She's an amazing artist. I'm going to have the links where you can find the pattern and where you can find the supplies to make one of these yourself. If you're on Facebook, please post if you make one of these. I think I'm going to make a matching wallet, maybe even a pouch to go with it to kind of help with storage and organization. But definitely, amazing, amazing tote, amazing pattern, gorgeous materials. So in love with it, and I've got to go teach a class. So I will see you in my next video, and I hope you guys have a great day.